Okay, our next speaker is going to be Douglas Marker. Now, Douglas runs a real good SBIR program in PEO IWS, Integrated Warfare Systems. His product lines vary from radars to algorithms to sensors at the system and component level. And he provides products to basically every platform around, whether it be submarines, aircraft carriers, or surface ships. So he's got a list of them, and it's all yours.
Good morning. As Mac indicated, I'm from PEO IWS. I'm the technology manager for SBIR and STTR. IWS is a very unique organization in that we touch all of the other PEOs within Navsea. I'm going to introduce just briefly a little bit about us. Within IWS, we have what we call major program managers. The numbers range from IWS 1 to up through 10. And each of them have different acquisition authorities and different responsibilities. Today I'm going to be talking about SBIR topics and STTR topics. We have 18 SBIR and 3 STTR. They were generated by individuals from IWS 1, 2, 5, 7's a little bit involved with them, and 10. As I go through, I'll talk a little bit about what each one of them do. And also within each one of them, some of them have categories, and I'm going to try and briefly touch, because we haven't got very much time, the different categories that we have. For example, we have 3 which have to do with 3D representations and graphics to see the entire combat system or the combat environment that we're in. Something I'd like to mention, though, as far as you who are starting maybe with respect, and even those of you who are working with topics. If you look at the topic, there's a place where they have 2 authors. If you're going to generate a topic, you need to contact those 2 individuals, at least one of them. The reason we have 2 is a lot of these individuals are on travel and it's hard to get hold of them because of their schedule. Don't give up, get hold of them and ask them a whole bunch of questions. You want to know where the system's going to land, whether it's going to be a combat system or an element. An element is something like a radar or a gun or a missile or projectile that's part of that combat system. You want to know that. You want to know a little bit about the time frames that are involved. You want to know a little bit more about maybe the interfaces. You have the opportunity of calling them by phone now. I believe the BA has been out on the street, the pre-BA. And for a month, you can call them and ask them all kinds of questions. Please do so, because you're going to be addressing exactly, or it'll help you address within your proposal exactly what they're looking for. It's kind of like if you generate a proposal without that, you're just guessing. So I can't say enough about that. Another thing that you need to be aware of, there is a term referred to as ITAR. This has to do with the fact that only U.S. government citizens can apply for can work on that particular effort. As a consequence, STTRs are not ITAR, because quite often the universities will have individuals who are not U.S. citizens. That's something you need to be very careful about as you go forward. The reason I bring that up is almost all of our SBIR topics are ITAR. And so if you're considering a team, you need to make sure that you've got a team that's just U.S. citizens for those types of topics. With respect to our organization, we have had great success, I think. We have something like 54% of our Phase 2s move into Phase 3 type funding. And that's a very commendable thing. We've had great successes where some programs have gone on and received virtually millions of dollars, some of tens of thousands of dollars, which isn't as impressive. But we've also had other programs which have saved the Navy phenomenal dollars. A few years ago, we had a project which saved $14 million per platform for the DDG-1000. Okay, with that then, I'd like to go into the actual presentation. I'm going to use some paperwork here, which is actually the topic. You can, if you go out, of course, you can go and look up these topics in the BAA that's been released or going to be released. In fact, I think these are actually available for you. The first one, I've got 3 here which have to do with cybersecurity. So those of you who are interested in cybersecurity, this is an area for you to look at. Last year we had a cybersecurity proposal. The individuals came in, I said it's too broad. They reworked it. I said it's still too broad. And they said, well, why are you concerned? I said, if it's too broad because it's such a hot topic, you're going to have so many proposals, it's going to be tough to review them. They said, well, it's classified if we start getting into more detail. What happened was we had 38 proposals come in. And those poor guys had to evaluate every one of those. We aim to have them strict enough that they are such that you can, we only get about 10 topics. I just share that with you because our topics, we're hopeful, are narrow enough that they'll help you understand really what we want to do. Okay, Cybersecurity Frameworks, the first one. In this case, we have a whole bunch of cyber technologies that are used by the different combat systems and elements. Combat system is something like the Aegis or the SSDS, Ship Self-Defense System. The elements are the radars. There are sub-elements, and then we've talked about components, which get down to such things as mimics and stuff like that in radar. Because the different systems come on board at different times, and because each one of them have their unique ways of working cyber, we're looking for a framework that which will enable us to pull that all together in such a way that we can give the Aegis combat system a better way of working. On this particular one, we're also tied into IWS 10. And IWS 7 is where, in fact, one of the authors, I believe, is in IWS 1. These individuals are deep into cybersecurity. The next topic that I want to talk about is 049. This one is cyber resiliency via virtualization. One of our concerns is we need to be ready. We need to have readiness. We need to be able to function no matter what the environment is. And the concern here is if we're receiving an attack, as far as a cyber attack, we want to make sure that the system is viable. We're not claiming that we can protect us against anything, everything, but we want to make sure that the system can actually continue working in some way. And one of the ways that they've found that they think might provide the ability to meet this need is what we call virtualization. I don't understand totally what this means, but for those of you who might be interested in cyber security, I think that you'd understand what we're looking at. If we go to the next one, which is topic number 056, is that the one you've got? Okay, application memory space integrity monitor. Apparently, each application has a certain amount of memory that they use. The idea here is we need to have something external that can look into the system and watch what the applications are doing. And this is going to be a real challenge because something exterior doesn't know if this system is actually doing something unique and therefore is using more memory, or whether it's something that is an attack on the system and therefore is causing more memory to be used. So the issue here is we want something that can monitor what the system is doing, and for a given application, if suddenly there is a significant change in the memory from which they normally would be functioning, then they can identify that there may be some issue there. Okay, the next topic that we're going to be talking about is extreme. Now this one is really exciting. It should be, I wish it were a little bit later because we got another cyber, I think. You may not be aware of it, but I've actually seen this displayed. I've gone into a room and looked at a display, and it was three-dimensional, no matter what angle you looked at it from. What we're looking for is a capability to make this dynamic. So we have a total picture of the battlefield. We want this to be such that the sailors who are working with the combat systems can look at this picture from a 3D viewpoint and be able to see what's happening. We've got different time frames. We have different systems that are providing data, different data rates, and all of this we're hoping can be brought together so that we can see what is incoming, whether it's on the surface, whether it's in the air. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for algorithms that will support that type of work. If you go on to the next one here, this one here is a Fusion GUI for shipboard maintenance and activities. This is a big deal because we're always interested in condition-based maintenance. Condition-based maintenance is something where we've exercised a lot of SBR projects in support of this type of thing. What we're interested in is we want to make sure that as we go forward, that we take in consideration not just, let's see, I think this is the one. We want to make sure that we take in consideration the condition of all the systems on the ship, not just the individuals. And we want to be able to look at these together to see how the system is functioning, a system of systems is functioning on a given ship. We have a big cost in spares if we put them on the ship. And currently we have one of the processes we go through is a certain time frame. We move the spares in whether or not we need to. And we're trying to come up with a solid way of keeping track of when something is going to actually fail because of parameters that we're measuring with respect to the system or the components within the system. That gives you a feel for what we're doing there. The next topic is plug and play. Okay, this is, I may have actually described this one a little bit. This one is where we're looking at a framework. We have a lot of different systems that come in at different times, again, like I mentioned earlier. They all have their own individual time frames for failure and stuff that we have to watch and monitor. As we go forward, the big deal is the availability of that system, and we want to make sure that as a combat system, as a ship, that we're meeting our requirement. This one here I think is exciting. We're concerned about the condition of the systems as on an individual ship, like the previous one I mentioned here. But here, we would like to be able to assess what the availability is of a group of ships. Just because we've got maybe a CIWS on one ship that's not functioning, is there another set of ships in the vicinity that CIWS system could help them out? Now that'd be kind of tough because the CIWS is supposed to protect your own ship, but there may be something that another ship could do as far as a missile intercepting or whatever. So the purpose here is to have, it would involve tremendous amount of, if you look at the total ship picture, it's a big data issue. Big data is a big deal nowadays. A lot of people talk about it, and we would be able to have to handle all this type of information that's coming into us to help us out. 041, we're jumping back to the 3D display. Here we're looking for elements with the actual display itself. There are some aspects of the display that are going to have to be novel. We want to make sure that those address what we're trying to accomplish as far as the dynamic aspect of revealing this image, which everyone's going to be looking at. Okay, we're getting into IWS 2 here. Cognitive software algorithms for techniques for electronic warfare. Right now, the way we work with our EW systems, we have a library. Every time an enemy comes out and they use an EW system, we take the characteristics, the waveforms, and we put them into a library. When we go out onto the field and when the ship's out at sea, when a signal comes towards us, we sense those waveforms, and our system then goes in and picks out the appropriate library and says, hey, this is this system, this is what we need to do to counter it. Well, because of advances in technology and because of the agility of what an EW jammer can do for us, this is becoming obsolete. So we're looking for a capability which we're referring to as cognitive software algorithms, which will enable us on the fly, so to speak, sense something and be able to respond to it in a timely manner. Advanced Digital Exciter Radar, this is IWS 2 again. Our legacy systems particularly are vulnerable to the fact that we've only got certain waveforms and frequencies that we work with. We want to be able to work with our exciter or modify in such a way that it's open, that such with software we can make changes as we go forward to address the future capabilities that we anticipate might be in the threat, or as different changes occur with the threat, through algorithms we can make the appropriate changes. I think that that's enough said on that particular one there. Circulators. If you're familiar with the radar, a circulator in essence protects the system. When you're transmitting, you want to make sure some of that energy doesn't come in and destroy your other work. And then it has to be open also to receive the signals that come back. The circulators right now, the way they're set up is, I think they use ferrites in them. They are now a separate entity that they've attached to the mimics. What we want here is we want to reduce the weight, and we also want to reduce the complexity, and we want to have some way of integrating the actual circulators into the mimics at the mimic level. For those of you who are familiar with radar, I think you understand better what that means. The idea is that we would reduce weight, that we would, we're talking about multiple numbers of these systems, particularly in the, like the SPY-6, I believe it is, which is the air and missile defense radar. Let's see, the next one is affordable fast tunable notch X-band high frequencies. The issue here is in-band interference. The frequencies at which we are operating are continually being, I don't know, we're running into problems because we're finding that there are so many signals, communications, et cetera, in the frequencies that we want to work at. And the purpose of this is to come up with affordable, fast, tunable notch filters at X-band above. Down at the lower frequencies, it's not so difficult to do this. But at X-band and above, it becomes a real challenge. And we need some significant innovation in these areas. If any of you have that type of expertise, we're very interested. Okay, high-density capacitors and compact transmit and receive modules. We have thousands of these going into our ships, particularly with respect to the SPY-6. There is a lot of weight associated with these things. We're looking for making capacitors that are smaller, more compact. Maybe it's a situation where we could even have fewer of them, depending on how the thing is organized. I think that's enough. This was also applied to EW, not just radars. Improved radar imaging and variable resolution achieved via post-processing. We in IWS have just been tasked by the CNO to stand up an EOIR capability. Why are we looking at this? Right now, particularly, well, as an example, if we go into a port or someplace that is kind of we've got some concerns about going into those ports. We don't want our radars with a gun on them slewing around and monitoring everything that's going on. That could be even considered a hostile threat to someone that's doing that. Also, it puts a lot of stress upon the system that we're working with. And we don't want to turn on our big radars either, because that's another issue. In fact, we have restrictions on where we turn on our radars associated with Aegis. So we need something that can also give us a different way of monitoring what's going on. So we're working with technologies. We're standing up an EOIR capability. We're looking for a system that would support this type of thing. So we're looking for improved infrared imaging capabilities. And we're looking for a 360-degree coverage as we go forward. And we have something that's kind of interesting here. When you, as a contractor, a small business, your product is you're going to either be a prime. That happens a lot when we get into sonar type stuff. Or you may team up with a company. We had that happen with the periscope detection radar, where a small business and a prime got together. We have a situation where you may be selling your product directly to a prime, and you also may be in a situation where the government buys it outright. So that's one of the questions you need to find out when you talk to that point of contact. One of the landing places may not even be within IWS or ships. It may be in another area. Someone asked about other categories where funding is. This one is going to support a program which is referred to as a future naval capability. The name of it is CSERS. It's run out of ONR, Office of Naval Research. IWS 5, let's see, we've got, we're looking for a closed loop, closed loop capability for fully adaptive active sonar. We're looking for a closed loop capability. Those in the radar programs understand what closed loop is. We don't have that with respect to sonar. There are issues associated with this because a sonar works a lot differently. With radar, you got frequencies and time frame is very quick. With sonar, there's a delay as far as the signals. Also, we have separate pinging and multiple pinging. There's some real challenges there. Gamification, what we're trying to do here is we've found that the sailors that are coming into the fleet now are used to doing games on their computers, and we're trying to make training associated with the particular system we're working with here. We're trying to have we want the company to generate a game based on the type of environment that they would be in, which would encourage them to be excited about the work, they'd learn it, and ideally would, how should I say it, they'd become involved such that they would want to keep their training up. You lose a tremendous amount of your training over a period of time, whereas this would be a game that ideally they could keep up to date with what they're doing. Let's see, the next one is a Nesta bidirectional data exchange. Here, the concern with the submarine or the sonar community is that we've got data coming from a whole bunch of different sensors. For example, we have the periscope detection radar, and then there are others. Those signals need to be brought together and integrated together, and we need to be able to send information back and forth so that everyone has a good feel for what's going on in the environment. 171.072, removable and maintainable future hull arrays. We're talking about ships that are going to be lasting for 33 years. We want to be able to have hull-mounted arrays that are associated with sonar that are easy to take off and put back on as far as maintenance is concerned. I think that's sufficient to talk about that one. This one here, we have several training topics that come out, and people say, well, aren't these all same or similar? There are major differences because of the systems that the sailors are being trained on. In this case, we're talking about the SQQ-89A. It's taking us something like 68 days to train the sailors. We're looking to cut that down to 46 days. And there's some ideas that we're hoping would come from the individuals to resolve this. The term that the CNO used is Chief Naval Officer, is high velocity training. This next one is kind of akin to that. It's connected with IWS 9, and this is computerized psychological techniques. There are areas, I think this may be no, it's not. I was thinking this might be a STTR. There are techniques that are being used from a psychological viewpoint that supposedly facilitate learning of a sailor or an individual who's working on a system, and it's done in such a way that their retention is higher and they learn more quickly. We're looking for work in that particular area there. I think that covers them all. I apologize for having to go through it so quickly. I would emphasize that to get more details than what you see in a given topic, call those two authors when you can. Now, you can ask questions in the future after the BAA actually comes out on the street, but you have to answer them through a website, and the answer is going to go out to the world. And I suspect that most of you don't want that to go out because your competitor may figure out what you're doing and take advantage of it. So call those individuals, and ask all the questions you can. They can't tell you how to write your proposal, but they can answer a lot of questions you have. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Douglas. I told you that would be DC to Daylight. He's got components, materials, big data, small algorithms, et cetera. So